Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of the Wedding Biz, in which I conduct in-depth and revealing interviews of icons and those who I feel are the next generation icons of the weddings and event industry. And this is all to provide you with education and inspiration for any entrepreneur, but especially event industry professionals and consumers. And this is hopefully to lead to an even bigger sense of empowerment. So I want to welcome all the new listeners from all around the world, especially those of you in Australia who I know are tuning in for today's very special guest. Also want to thank those of you who have been coming back week in and week out. Really appreciate all your support for the show. I am so excited about this new year, 2020. There is going to be a major announcement I'm going to have in a month. I know I've been teasing this out for a long time, but it's finally happening. I'm going to be adding a new division. You'll find out in about a month or so. So stay tuned to find out about that. And also, I've just already interviewed so many wonderful guests. I'm so excited to release their episodes, and I have so many more who I'm interviewing soon. I couldn't say more. So I want to mention last week's episode. It was with Klain Gessel, an award-winning international photographer whose images have been featured in dozens of magazines, including National Geographic and Smithsonian. Klain was also inducted into all of the National Geographic fine art galleries across the world, and we had just an incredible conversation about what it means to really, truly, deeply connect with your clients and what it means for them as well. And so now, without further ado, I want to announce today's special guest, and it is John Emmanuel, based out of Sydney, Australia, the premier floral designer out of Sydney, Australia. And he was so graciously introduced to me by Wendy El-Khoury with Wedded Wonderland. Wedded Wonderland gives its followers exclusive, on-trend, and immediate access to the latest celebrity news, wedding advice, beauty tips, and lifestyle inspiration. And in addition to hosting incredible educational symposiums, they also provide a curated list of wedding vendors for all your planning needs. So check out weddedwonderland.com. So more about John Emmanuel. John is best known for creating exquisite grand-scale floral installations, and whatever he creates has a stunning element of luxury. A known leader in his market, John has worked alongside many high-profile Australian wedding planners in continuous collaboration to create some of Sydney's most luxurious events. John also hosts the John Emmanuel Luxury Wedding Masterclass. So enjoy my conversation with John Emmanuel. John, it is such a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show. Wendy El-Khoury with Wedded Wonderland highly recommend that I have you on. And when I saw your work, it absolutely took my breath away.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for having us. And Wendy's a great person who's done a lot for the wedding industry here in Australia. And it's a pleasure to be speaking to you.
Yes, same here. Well, so I'm curious, where are you from? Are you from Australia?
I'm born in Australia. However, my heritage is Maltese, so from a little Mediterranean island in Europe.
Wow. Is it you're talking about, so your parents are from there?
Yeah, correct.
Did you live there at all?
No. I've visited there once, and it's a beautiful little Mediterranean country. But I'm very proud to be Australian, to be born here in Australia.
What did your parents do? What did each of them do? Like when you were growing up, basically.
Growing up. So I actually grew up or was born in country Australia, which is about 5.5 hours drive out of Sydney, on a farm there. And then we ended up on a market garden about an hour and a half from Sydney. So it's really been a really big sort of farm journey throughout my life until I was about 13. Unfortunately, my mother tragically died in a car accident when I was 3, so that changed things a lot. But yeah, so that's where we started, and that's what the family background is.
I know. I mean, I'm certainly this would be obvious. It's so hard to lose a mother at 3, but when you say it affected you so much, in what ways could you say now?
That's a difficult question to ask. Obviously, as a child growing up without a mum from the age of 3 was quite difficult. And then intermarriages have a little bit of their own problems as well. But out of this, my floristry career was born out of the tragedy almost. So when I was 13, I ended up moving in with my grandmother, who used to help my aunt and cousin do wedding flowers. And that's how I entered in the florist industry when I was 13.
Oh, interesting. And I know that's a difficult question. I ask it before. I tragically lost a brother when I was 13. He was 11. And you look back at that and it's interesting. My mother tells me that, my parents thankfully had gone into therapy at the time. And since then I've done quite a bit to help deal with it. But, one thing that really sticks out that she says about it, how can you even put this in words? But she did say it's like this steel spring that is just squashed down. But after time, it bounces back even higher than it was before. Like in a sense, the capacity to understand the value of life. And I believe for myself, and I wonder if for you too, if there's also a motivation and a drive to really do what we want to do, what really is in our heart.
Absolutely. And that is, it's so true. It's so true. And I think growing up with that little bit of emptiness and things like that, it just propels you to strive more and attain excellence more and just be totally driven. So it has built or been part of my foundation of growing up and who I am today.
Yes. Well, when you were 13, so you said you moved in, you said it was with your grandparents. Is that right?
Yeah, with my grandmother. Yes.
And your grandmother, and she was at a flower shop that you said she had?
Well, my aunt and my cousin used to do weddings from home, and she used to help them on a Friday or Thursday and Friday. And at 13, what do you do? So I used to go along with her, and I had a great connection with my aunt and my grandmother and my cousin. So I just used to go over and help prepare the flowers and things like that. And then from a little buttonhole to a flower girl basket to, then learning more is how it all started. And, my aunt is one of my biggest fans. So she sees the pictures of what we do now and she's just blown away by the size of the events that we do. She goes from a little buttonhole that I used to get you to make or a flower girl basket. Now you're creating these amazing transformations. And it's a really proud moment, actually. It really, really is.
That's so wonderful that she's still around to be able to see what you've done with that, with what started as her passion. So when you started to do this as a teenager, did you feel some kind of a special passion, or at the time, was it still just something to do?
Well, previously, even at 13, in the back of my mind, I'd always wanted to do bridal and evening wear. So it was always wedding orientated and it was always creative. However, I fell into floristry and developed a passion for it.
But John, where did your interest, even in the bridal market and before flowers, where do you think that came from at such a young age?
Well, my stepmother was a seamstress. So she used to make wedding gowns and I used to see that. And I suppose a little bit of a passion derived from that. So, for weddings, I absolutely love flowers from the bottom of my heart, but passion about weddings, oh my goodness, I eat, sleep, and breathe weddings. So,
But why do you think that is? What is it about weddings that moves you so much?
It's such an emotional day. And to be in a situation where, this bride in a lot of cases has been dreaming of her wedding from the age of 5 or 6, and to be part of that, even today, after being quite successful, it's still an honor for me to be part of a bride and groom's wedding. It's an absolute honor, and that's how I treat it. There's many other florists and vendors they could have chosen, but for them to choose you and to be part of such a significant time in their lives, I think is just an absolute honor and a privilege. It really, really is.
I agree. Well, so what happened? Did you go to school, or I don't know if it's this? We use the same words as the States, but college after high school? Did you go?
So I actually left in year 10. So I don't know what the equivalent to that is in the States, but I left at year 10 and basically went into a traineeship the next day.
Oh my God! For what? A traineeship for what?
A florist traineeship in a retail outlet and a retail florist.
Was that, I don't know much about, culture in Australia, but was that a huge leap of faith? Was that something that not many people did, leave school for something like this?
Well, at that point in time, because we're talking 26 years ago, something like that. So in that time there, the culture there was fine. If you were going to do a trade like a florist or a hairdresser or an electrician or something like that, you'd leave at year 10 and then start what you call your traineeship or your apprenticeship.
Ah, I see. So how old were you then?
I would have been 14, 15.
Oh, that is interesting to me here. Okay.
Yeah. It would have been 15.
Relatively young.
Relatively young. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And what was that experience like for you? What do you feel you learned from it?
Well, you learn all the fundamentals, which was really good. However, from then I springbolted like within probably 18 months of that time of being in partnership in a retail outlet. So it was very fast paced. My life has always been very fast paced and just chasing dreams. And it usually happens quite quickly.
Now, that's interesting. I love how you say chasing dreams. Where do you think you got let's say, the fearlessness to do that? I mean, of course, we all want to be able to make our dreams, but I do think it's only a portion of the population, probably a minority, that actually really chases it, as we say.
Yeah. I think growing up, growing up on a farm, and it's quite seasonal, and I don't come from a wealthy family at all. And I just think, growing up in that surrounding is just, you know what, I want better for myself and I want better for my children, and I want to be successful. And I do really believe that that's where the drive has come from my childhood, and always just wanting to, I think also losing mum young, always wanting to impress my father and my stepmother and my siblings and all of that. I'm one of 7 children and right in the middle. So a very big family. So the middle child syndrome of, just wanting to succeed and be seen and things like that. I truly believe that did help catapult to where we are now.
So how long were you in the retail environment before you ended up starting your own business?
Okay, so we were in the retail sector working for people, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So for about 4 years, of which I got married really young. And my wife and I got married in September. And by the beginning of December, we opened our first solely owned flower shop, a retail outlet. And we were in retail for about 16, 17 years.
16 or 17 years. Wow.
In retail. We had multiple stores at a time.
Oh, you did. And now I'm assuming that were you handling weddings and events as well? I assume you were.
Yes. So I've always had a passion for weddings. So we always had a wedding sector within the retail outlets. And generally it was run separate to the retail. But yeah, there's always been that passion for the wedding sector. But what we saw happen about 8 years ago, the retail market really changed in floristry. So we decided to not renew our leases and we sold our last shop and totally concentrated on the wedding and event side of it. But at the same time, we saw a massive shift within the wedding industry as well.
Well, and can you tell me more about that? What were the changes that led you to leave it and what were those shifts?
Well, weddings were becoming much bigger. So what we see now happening in Australia wasn't happening 7-8 years ago in the way of the size of weddings, the luxuriousness of weddings and so forth. So a wedding seven years ago, say, a flower spend, if we had a $7,000 to $8,000 flower spend, it was a big spend. And now we're doing weddings up to $100,000, $110,000 just on floral.
And is that equivalent to US dollars or no, that's Australian?
No, I'm talking Australians.
Yeah. No, I'll have to look up all the listeners here. We're all scrambling to do the conversion.
It just depends how good the Australian dollar is at the time.
Right. That's funny. Well, and so when you did that, I mean, well, I imagine, was that a certain leap, that you would sell the stores, or I imagine you must have had enough business that you felt confident that you no longer needed, let's say, the foundation of the retail outlets?
Well, look, it was definitely a step of faith. We've always, as I said earlier, we'd always done the weddings as well as the retail. And, retail, there's always cash or there's always money in the till. And for me, it was like letting go of that and like, oh my goodness, now we're just waiting for the weddings to come in. And the weddings were there and there was a cycle and it was great. So it was just the perfect timing.
But did you feel a fear when you did this? I mean, you're a typical entrepreneur. Did you feel fear?
I think fear is the wrong word. I think uncomfortableness is probably the right term. I felt more uncomfortable because we were used to conducting a business a certain way.
How and what was that way?
Well, that was having the retail.
Oh, I see. I see. So yes, going off in the direction of fully depending now on the income from events.
Yes.
It's interesting. I like to think, I love this phrase, leap off the cliff and trust that the net will appear.
Yes.
And I define that as a certain amount of fear, but I like how you're framing it. It is different to say that it's a certain amount of just being uncomfortable versus having to give it that edge, that word of fear.
Absolutely. And you know what? Uncomfortableness stops us from becoming complacent. So every time we hit a new height, even in budgets, in weddings, it's a stretch. Am I fearful of it? No. Am I uncomfortable? Yes. But uncomfortableness is good because it makes us not become complacent.
Yes, it is motivating. And eventually I'm going to want to talk about, the need for us to, keep reinventing ourselves, right? So that degree of uncomfortableness, which essentially is what you've already been doing from the beginning,
Yes.
getting into the stores, expanding to have multiple locations and then to get out of it. It seems like that's just critical to us in many businesses, but especially a creative business like the one we're in.
Absolutely.
So then, I'd love to get into, more about your own personal signature. Like in learning more about you, I know that you are really best known for creating these just exquisite, just grand scale floral installations. And I know, reading from your website, ranging from tablescapes to flower walls to grand ceiling designs. How would you describe your personal signature to someone who doesn't really know the business? If you could put that in words.
The John Emmanuel look is definitely luxurious. Whatever we create always has that element of luxury. So for the moment, the trend that's going, there's a big trend of very boho, very relaxed sort of a look. Although a bride may want a boho spin on her look, it will always have that John Emmanuel stamp of this looks luxurious, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I understand that reception flowers in particular are your main passion. Is that right? Or a very big one for you?
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that? Can you tell me why and what that's about for you?
When a bride walks into the room and we've invested so much time pre-wedding discussing the designs with her and or working with event planners, and then you see the bride walk in and her reaction of when she sees her room, her reception room, it's just absolutely priceless. We're in the business of making dreams come true, and it just inspires you to keep on going, do better, and do more amazing weddings. And the stress levels are high. When you're talking about the wedding industry, everything's on timeline, and you almost forget all about the stressfulness of that event once the bride has seen it and you've seen her reaction.
And what is your general process when you are dealing with a bride or a bridal couple? Can you kind of take me through it from the beginning when you first meet them?
Sure. So when a bride first gets in contact with us, it's usually via phone or email. So we'll send them an introduction to who we are, what we're about, our pricing structures as well. Like we have minimum spends as well. And then they're booked in for a consultation. And then we'll basically just sit down. And the first thing I say to my clients is, what is your vision? What would you like me to create for you? And then we basically start from that. And very soon after that, I go to what's your price point? Because what's happening now with, with social media, so many amazing weddings are posted on Instagram, or in most cases, they bring pictures of my work of weddings that we've done in the past. And they may be looking at a $80,000 flower spend or a $100,000 flower spend, but have a $10,000 to $15,000 budget. So we need to look at what elements in that wedding the client really likes, what we need to pick from that wedding and try and bring it in as close to budget as possible.
So, John, in terms of the consumer, they're so much more educated now that they've got, they've got the internet, they've got Google, they've got social media in particular. And so When they're bringing you pictures and a Pinterest board, I mean, is it something that you welcome or is it more frustrating because you know you want to create something, I imagine, fresh and new for them? How do you deal with them when they do that, when they show you?
Look, ultimately, it's my job to give the client their dream. So if they love an event that we've done prior and they want to mimic it, I have no problem with that because it's all about the client's what they wish for and what they want us to create for their big day. So it is great when people are, yeah, let's do something different and things like that. But in a lot of cases, it can get a little bit repetitive because once you build a brand and a particular look, that's why people are coming to you. Like I've had clients bring me, really unstructured, almost barn-style designs, and I'm like, sweetheart, what are you here for? Like, this isn't my look. Yeah. So, well, I don't put it that bluntly, but sometimes, it's just like you come to a luxury supplier who specializes in creating a beautiful luxury look, but you've given me something that belongs in a barn, which is beautiful, but it's not our style. So, I would actually prefer to lose a client then move off brand, because ultimately by building our brand and being faithful to our brand, it's what keeps us in business.
See, and I think a lot of people, especially perhaps newer people, are afraid of turning down any kind of business. But I feel that there's a power and in a sense, a message to the universe, when you do something like that, like you're saying, when you realize, this is not really, we're not a good match. Was that something you were able to do early in your career to be able to recognize that and express that?
Yeah, definitely. Like there was some crazes that come in and we just thought it was absolutely hideous. Or you try and sell the client something else that's closer to what you prefer doing.
So can you tell me perhaps a story of maybe one of your favorite floral installations, how that went?
Oh my gosh, which one?
There's so many, huh?
Oh my goodness, we create so many beautiful weddings. I really love the process of also working with our wedding coordinators, like with Diane Curry, who's internationally known as a wedding planner and stylist, and some other ones. So, to particularly pinpoint one, like of a favorite, is just really crazy. There was one that comes to mind, and it was actually, now that I'm thinking of it, and it's one of Australia's largest wholesaler and importer of fresh flowers. And we had the privilege of doing one of his son's weddings. And it had a retail spend of probably like equivalent to 450,000 Australian dollars. And just to step back and see that room was unbelievable. And the amount of flowers in the ceiling and and the tablescapes were amazing and everything was just absolutely perfect on it. But the whole stretching, and more than a story, it's more of an experience, I suppose. But there's so many beautiful weddings that we've worked on, it's hard to pinpoint one.
What about handling unforeseen challenges, which we all face at every event?
Oh my goodness.
It sounds like I hit on something here.
Oh, okay. So I can tell you a story about that one. For my Australian or Sydney listeners or who are listening to this, it might make more sense. But there's this beautiful historical building in the middle of Sydney CBD, Queen Victoria Building. The access is an absolute nightmare. Multiple lifts, multiple levels. You're trolleying flowers through this amazing building, which is also a shopping centre to the end of where the venue is. And it was early on, so we're probably talking about 6 years ago, when weddings were starting to become massive. And the truck arrives in the loading dock, and the flowers weren't secured properly.
Oh no.
Yeah, and then we're talking like from our workroom to the CBD, easy 50 minutes in a truck on a weekend.
Uh-oh.
And there were 12 or 14 arrangements in that van. I could only identify 3.
Oh no, John. Oh my
Now,
gosh.
to make matters worse, it was a tight, what we call here in Australia, bump in time or setup time. Uh-huh. So we had 2 hours to set up this event.
Oh no.
Thank goodness I had a big team on that day. And it was stressful as anything, probably one of the most stressful experiences in my life. But everything got fixed. Everything was amazing. and the bride would have never known the difference.
But how? How did you fix something like that?
Well, we had a lot of extra flowers. I had 3 or 4 staff downstairs just rearranging flowers and working at the speed of light. I was upstairs doing backdrops that needed to be done within this ridiculous time frame. We had our runners then, or the guys that we call runners, bringing these floral arrangements up. Now, these arrangements were big and heavy. So these guys were struggling, 2 people to carry these up the stairs. But it was taking too long and I was stressed. So I just was grabbing these arrangements, putting them on my head, going up a flight of about 20 stairs to get them in their final resting space.
Wow.
And but it's amazing what adrenaline does. But the main thing is that what could have been an absolute disaster, nobody would have known the difference.
Well, see, and that's so interesting to me. It seems like a great skill that we need to hone and develop, when there is a problem like that, to somehow, I don't know, like for a moment, I've gotten to the point, I used to wear my emotions on my sleeve. I have a music and entertainment company and we do luxe weddings and events all over. And there was a time when I would be walking really quickly. I would look very stressed. I would stress out my band people. And I finally realized that I need to protect them from that. And somehow, although I feel it inside, I need to portray calmness, especially for my team and especially in a situation like what you're talking about.
Yes. That's so true. It's so true. And, and I think how we handle situations like that, you should never yell at your staff or treat your staff with disrespect. Sometimes we need to push our team along, but as the leader, it's so important for us to lead well and react in a certain way in these occasions.
What about also the business aspect of your business? Obviously, in order to have a business as successful as it is, there is the business side of it. It's such a cliche, but it's really true, isn't it? In terms of how do you take the creative side, take the business side, and be able to integrate the two and create a major business, which is what you have. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm very blessed that my wife is very much business minded and a strong business person.
So she runs the business for you, essentially?
Yeah, she does.
Was this from the very beginning that you had her?
Yes, yeah. I've always been the creative and she's always been the business person.
So is she the one, or are you involved also, let's say, in the hiring and the firing of people, for example?
Well, the hiring and firing of people is probably done jointly. So there's like, say for instance, she'll run all the book side of it. However, I will do the quoting and the costings and the ordering of flowers, which we need to protect our margins in and things like that. So on the business side of it, it's definitely both of us who do work on it, but she's definitely stronger and more business minded. So if I'm spending too much on flowers, she'll pull me in. It's like, John, you spent too much this week and things like that. Because ultimately, it's one thing to be passionate about what we do, but ultimately we are in business to make money as well.
It's so interesting because I just recently brought on a business partner for my music company, Kushner Entertainment, because and it's a similar dynamic where I'm the more creative. I certainly have business experience, but I'm the more creative. He is creative, but he has more of the business, of the infrastructure and really understanding how to run the machine, the engine of a business. And I am more excited than ever to be able to have that, to free me up. And I imagine that's what it's done for you, right? Is to free you up to handle the more creative side.
Absolutely. And look, it's such a blessing. It's such a good balance to have because in a lot of cases, creatives aren't good business people.
That's right. It doesn't always come as naturally, does it?
No, it doesn't. So it's just a really, really good balance. And we are a family business, and my wife and I were young when we both got married, and we've been in business and worked together all of our married life. And now we have our children involved in our business as well. So it's really a family business that we're really passionate about.
Well, now wait, isn't that a dangerous aspect? That you have family involved like that?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I hit upon something, huh?
Look, it has its challenges. Like when
Yeah.
you're working with your wife, you're sleeping with your wife, you're at home with your wife. Look, at times it can be very strenuous, particularly peak season when we're working 80 to 100 hours a week at times, back
Oh,
to
yeah.
back. And, you're running on empty. Like it can be difficult, but yeah, we make it work and we've gotten through. And yes, sometimes it does get heated. My wife is of Italian origin, so we're both hot-blooded Mediterraneans. So everything's very passionate and boisterous. Like our workroom is sometimes like the sitcom Everyone Loves Raymond. So but that's our business. You know what I mean? It's loud. It's family. It's beautiful. So and our staff come to love that as well.
Well, listen, if the right people are listening to this podcast, who knows, you might get a reality show offer.
Yeah, bring it on.
I should follow you around with a camera. It sounds like it would be very entertaining.
It is very entertaining. So, but it's amazing. It's really good. And, stemming from what we were talking about, my childhood earlier, and, losing mum and, not probably having the most amazing upbringing, it makes me as a husband and as a father to really want to give the best to my family, which, our business is part of that. So, yeah, it's great.
So if I could also ask you about your pricing philosophy, not your specific pricing, but do you charge a design fee or percentage? How do you do that, generally speaking?
Right. So first and foremost, I'm a floral designer. So yes, I do style weddings, but I don't charge a styling fee. Again, because I make money on my flowers, as opposed to a stylist who charges a styling fee, but doesn't have anything to really sell other than what they're creating, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So no. So the answer is no, I don't charge a styling fee, although many people have spoken to me that I should. But yeah, I haven't felt the need to do it at this point.
Although, and in a way, it seems that charging a styling fee is also a branding statement, isn't it? That you should be getting paid a fee as a designer.
Yeah, I don't know if the Australian market's there yet.
That's an interesting point. I mean, here in the States, and you could hear in the podcast, because I for about a year out of the 2 years, I've been asking a lot of people about pricing, and there is a certain percentage of people that will charge a design fee and others that don't. And sometimes at conferences, it can be a very heated discussion as to the pros and cons of doing each of those. And what about, I mean, you've been in business for a long time.
A long time.
Yeah. What about when economic challenges hit you? How have you dealt with that?
Well, look, we've had the challenges with business before when the GFC come upon the world, right? Mm-hmm. It actually hit Australia a little bit later, I think, and not to the effect of other countries. So we were blessed in that sense. Yes, it did affect Australia, but it wasn't hit like it was in the States and Europe. Like the economy was still going. Yes. So, but we did feel the crunch, and it probably came a little bit later. And that's when retail just dropped. And unfortunately, this is now I'm putting, talking from the depth of our experiences, we had to put the family home on the market to clear debt.
Oh my gosh, really?
And this was all at the time that we were getting out of retail and focusing on events. So it was a very uncomfortable time, as I said before. However, we knew that the event industry was changing. We knew that we had bookings, and there's nothing like an unhealthy cash flow to startle a business. So my wife and I, we prayed about it. We made the conscious decision of, let's sell the house. We were able to downsize, which was really good. So we were still on the real estate ladder. And it actually enabled us just to clear our debts and get our cash flow happening again. And, I think it was 16 months after we made that decision and downsized, we're able to upsize again. So, you need to make the right decisions in time. And they're hard decisions as a leader of a business, as a husband and a father. Do you know what I mean? They're very hard decisions, but this one really paid off.
I love the story that it had such a happy ending to it. That was such a courageous move. I mean, maybe you would say it was necessary, but I would say it was also quite courageous. And then look how it paid off. That's wonderful. Now, I understand too that here in 2019, I know we're at the very end of it, but you introduced a new luxury silk flower range.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that? I know you're excited about that.
Yeah. So it took a while for me to succumb to it because I was anti-artificial flowers at weddings, because we wanted to build a brand of luxury and this was a cheaper product, and I steered away from it for a long time. But, I think I hit 40 and it's just it's time to be a real business person and not just be creative and drop your ego. So at least 30% of our inquiries were coming in as artificial flowers. And I'm
that's interesting.
We need to meet the market here. So it's been very positive. We just launched it at Wedded World, which is less than 6 months ago.
Uh-huh.
This side of Christmas, we will probably do about 14, 15 silk weddings already.
Wow.
Which has been amazing. It's just been so well received. And again, it's also developed because I said earlier that we're a family business and our son, who is 21, is with us full time. And rather than just giving him a job, I wanted to give him something that he can grow and really be successful in. So we're actually in partnership with him with this artificial range. So rather than just paying a wage, we actually made room for him in the business. And the response has just been amazing. It really, really has. And the clients are absolutely beautiful. They are just the sweetest clients who are so excited that John Emmanuel is part of their wedding because they would have never been able to afford it in fresh.
Ah, yes.
And the feeling you coming back to what I was talking about before is giving people their dreams. Do you know what I mean? It is so beautiful. And the artificial client is a very different client to the top end fresh. And both are beautiful clients, don't get me wrong. But it just comes from a different place and it's just amazing. And I absolutely love working with both clienteles now.
And I understand at the time of this recording that in a couple of weeks you have a masterclass called the John Emmanuel Luxury Wedding Masterclass. Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. We're so excited about it. So it sold out a little while ago and then we just released another 3 tickets and there's 2 left now. And, after being in the industry for so long, in the flower industry and in the wedding industry, and the industry has been so good to you, I just think you get to that point where, do you know what? I want to give back. And by having the masterclass and giving the students or the attendees the tools and the keys to be able to create what we create or even, develop their own style and things like that is just such an awesome thing. And it's also really good for the industry. And people have said to me, John, but why are you in Sydney? You're going to host masterclasses where you're going to be teaching competitors or people who could be potential competitors. And I'm like, guys, it's actually good for the industry as a whole, right? Because if Australia is producing more and more high-end luxury weddings, it's great for us on a world stage.
That's right.
And for myself as a designer, it's okay, well, if this is what we're teaching now, I need to be looking, okay, what are we going to be doing next? And always pushing myself to be ahead of the competitors. But, it's really, the masterclasses are awesome. And I absolutely love imparting my passion and skills and techniques to other people.
Yeah, I love that. And I also, I read about the different topics. I mean, these are just some of them, but business, tabletop design, event styling, logistics, backdrops, structures, entry design, techniques. It sounds, obviously you're really covering all aspects. I love that you're including business in it as well.
Absolutely. So we'll talk, and I actually wear my heart on my sleeve in our masterclasses. There's a top hairstylist and influencer in Sydney, Natalie Ann Hair, and she does masterclasses and teaches. And she said something to me very profound before I did my first masterclass. And she said, John, just give them everything. Give your attendees everything. And that has just resonated with me. And if they want to ask my margin, I'll tell them, this is our markup. We buy for this and we sell for this. And we'll talk about the business and so forth and the techniques. And we do not hold back in giving to our students what we know.
Well, let's say that you are also giving a masterclass to event designers. What would some of the main, biggest one or two tips be to event designers who need to advise their couples around floral design?
So I would probably go through the process of, what is your vision? What would you like me to create? We talk about budgets and things like that. So we will start with the fundamentals like that, and then we will build from there. And, we all want our weddings to be Instagrammable. So it's important for us when we're designing a room to design, okay, how's this going to photograph?
Yes.
We want this to look great for the bride, of course, first and foremost, the bride, but we want this to look great on social media as well. And most of our clients want it to look great on social media as well. So we'll talk about that, the design, your principles and elements of design, not just within the basis of a floral arrangement, but within the whole scope of the room. Everything needs to be well balanced and be done purposely. Nothing just happens. Everything's very thought out, meticulously designed and executed. We go through all of that.
And how about some of your biggest tips for wedding couples when they're considering floral aspect of their wedding and how to choose the right floral designer? And what would you advise a couple?
Well, I think choose a floral designer who you feel more attracted to from a social media point of view. So if there's a particular designer that you're always, you're saving their pictures continually on social media, or you're putting them on your Pinterest board, what have you, meet with them first, right? And always feel a connection with your vendors. If you don't feel a connection with your vendors, don't book them.
That's a great point, that the relationship is so important, the connection.
Absolutely. It really is. It needs to be about a good connection and not always price, because the cheapest quote always isn't the best quote.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would definitely be one. And have realistic budgets.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as I was saying earlier, people come in with these $100,000 flower spends but don't have the budgets for it. So it's important to have a realistic budget. And it's a difficult one because it's the first time the couples have been married, right? So they need to have the realistic budget, but then how do they know what a realistic budget is? Because they haven't done this before. So it's a catch-22 almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And my final question, how would you define success? What does success mean to you?
Success for me is first and foremost my family, providing for my family. I'm really a family man. And if I'm successful, my family's successful, which brings such pride. Love what you do and be passionate about what you do. And from my standing point with weddings, with our clients, is make sure that they're happy. Ultimately, it's all about our clients. So family, passion, and clients. I think that defines my success.
I love that. Well, John, I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you here. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for listening to my conversation with John Emmanuel. Please be sure to check out his website at johnemmanuel.com.au. His social media handle is John Emmanuel Floral Events. All of this you can find not only at his website, but in the show notes at theweddingbiz.com. Be sure to check that out. And don't forget to check out John's recently introduced new luxury silk flower line and the John Emmanuel Luxury Wedding Masterclass. And please share this with your friends and colleagues if you enjoyed it, which I'm sure you did. It helps people to find out not only about John, but about the show. And that means a great deal to me. And you can also give it a great review wherever you get your podcast from. I also feel very grateful for that. And don't forget to listen to our follow-on segment coming out on Wednesday. It comes out each week with each interview. It's called The Next Level, in which I have a guest co-host, and together we tease out some of the highlights of the interview and help break them down into some specific tactics and tips that you can use to raise your own business to the next level. And this week's guest co-host will be Sean Lowe, a wonderful, wonderful consultant with the business of being creative. Sean has been on the show many times, has so much to say. And next week's interview is going to be with Michelle Rago, a wonderful destination planner, producer, and designer out of New York City who works all over the world. It's going to be part 2 with Michelle. Be sure to subscribe to The Wedding Biz on your podcast app so you know when all the new episodes come out. And one more time, we want to thank our sponsor for today's episode, and that is Wedded Wonderland. Be sure to check them out at weddedwonderland.com, and we'll catch you next week on The Wedding Biz.